Okay, well, hello and welcome to our Birch in Action Manager series on reporting today. I'm Kylie Marie, I'm a Client Success Manager here at Be Online Learning, and I'll be taking you through the Birch platform today. We will look at the key components that make up the Birch platform before exploring it as a manager and becoming familiar with some of the terminology, functions and features that you will encounter when doing standard reports. We'll look at what the report types are and how you can action non-compliant or incomplete learners. There is a question and answer or a chat box available. So should you feel you need to ask any questions during the session, please do so. If there's time at the end, we'll address them then. Otherwise, at the end or after the session, I'll email out any responses there. So there are 4 key components in Birch that make it easy to administer all of your learning. There are learning paths, which we create as goals, and the goals are made up of elements. The elements are types of learning activities, for example, e-learning content, on-the-job assessment, or an event such as a workshop or a webinar. We then have connections and we have tags, which provide the flexibility in how you create your learning groups and your work teams. The tags can also be used to enhance some of the reports and are a way to display featured learning in the catalogue. We'll touch on some of these components today and how they work within the reporting section. So we're going to start with compliance versus completion, the definition of those, before we jump right into the reporting of Birch. Compliance and completion, they sound similar, but they are different. And that's because in Birch, they are looking at the data from 2 different perspectives. When we talk compliance and creating reports to reflect compliance, Birch is taking into account any date requirements that may have been applied to the element or the goal. This may be a time allotted for new staff to complete an element or a renewal cycle for an element if it's required to be done at a particular time frame. When we talk about completion, Birch is simply checking, have they completed that goal or that element at that point in time? A yes or a no. I say at that point in time because and this is where it can get a bit confusing when you first hear about it or define it. But once you get used to it and once we go through the reports, you'll understand the difference between completion and compliance. But what we'll do is I've got a diagram or some little pictures to help me explain the difference between completion and compliance. So in this example, I've got at this place, every year, staff must complete a fire awareness and evacuation training session. So we've got here the attended date and when it's valid. That validity there is because the goal is set up to re-enroll staff at a point in time before the training is due to expire. So there is an expiry which is automatically calculated based on those renewal properties or renewal settings that have been applied. So with that in mind, we'll say Blake is this learner. Blake has been re-enrolled 2 months or a month or so in advance into the goal. But it is still valid until the 13th of July. So he has until then to redo the training. So while the icon doesn't show a green tick, so it's technically not completed like it is up here, he is still compliant because it is still valid. So if we ran a goal or an element completion report right now, the report would show at this point in time, because it's looking at people who are currently registered and need to complete it, Blake would appear as it's not complete. Just admit, please. So he would come up as he needs to complete this element. If we ran a goal or an element compliance report for this particular training, the report looks at the renewal period for that goal or the element, and the learner's previous completion date, if there is one. So in this example, Blake is still and will appear compliant in that compliance report until the 14th of July. If he fails to attend the training before that time. So in the end, completion and compliance is simple. The difference is completion is a yes or a no at that point in time. And a compliance is looking at the dates and the settings that have been applied, be that time allotted for new people. And that's kind of what people often use as a grace period for new starters, or if they are ongoing staff, the renewal settings. We can always revisit this if we need to, and as we work through the reports, we can do that. We can go through some more definitions or examples. An overview of our reports. So again, before I jump into the system and we go through some examples live, I've got some little pretty PowerPoint graphics. So our Birch reports are based on a cross-tab style report, so an X and a Y axis with graphical options. So here we have just a table, and each report will give you a row with percentages, or in some cases initials like a C or an NA, to denote the status. So depending on the report you run will determine if you have a percentage or an initial. Each column will represent a goal or an element that you've selected for that report. And each row will display a value from the grouping and the search filters that have been applied. So here we've said organizational divisions or something. You can then drill down into the report detail. So if we start at a high level like this, all the divisions, you can then go down into the individuals within IT. And you can also go back up into this area. Another feature of our reports is an export option. You can export them to Excel, CSV file, or print it into a PDF. It depends on your device that you're using and its configuration for PDF readers. The other thing we'll go through today that is available is an action button. Once you've drilled down to that individual level, you will see an action button, and you have an option to extract non-compliant or incomplete users. And this will include details of the learner and any connections, job positions, managers. So if you have a large list of people, that's a good way to filter out particular areas if you need to. And you have an action, non-compliant, incomplete. This will present you with a screen allowing you to email learners, but we'll go into this in more detail shortly. All right. If you've got any questions or anything you want me to clarify again from what we've just covered, please put it into the chat now, and I'll have a look at it after I go through the demonstration. All righty, we've got the real deal. So we're going to head to reporting and standard reports. I will bring up just a quick little one like this. Okay. So you have your report option drop down here. And actually, I might go back and do goal completion. So let's go through. We're going to bring up a goal. Let's go welcome to Be Online Learning. And we'll pick our streams here. All righty. So first off, we'll just go through these settings here, and I'll revisit our little 3 up here. But first, we've got groupings. So a grouping defines how the rows appear, and you'll be able to choose from any of the connections that are available in your platform, like job positions, additional roles, location, my team. So my team is specific to just looks at anyone and everyone in your team, regardless of if they're in it or not. That will bring that up, or you could just be specific here. So we're going to choose division. Yeah. And then you can actually further refine this by selecting a particular value from that first option. So if you chose job positions as your grouping or division, you can choose a particular thing. Actually, let's go back. Let's do job position instead. That'll be better. And we'll pick sales. Sales and licensed agents. My keyboard's not working. Great. Licensed agent. And we're going to run the report. Okie doke. So that way we've just said on this goal and these streams, we're going to bring up a report for all of these 2 job positions. So mind you, there might be 5 or 6 groups of job positions, but we only want to see the licensed agents and the sales representatives. We can then even refine this even further by using filters like status, the role, job positions again, or communities and other connections. So say we want to see, as a manager, you have oversight over you've got job positions everywhere in particular sites or facilities. You want to refine it just to one facility in particular. You might then choose to do a community or a connection, which will refine it down. So at the moment, we've got 1 licensed agent and we have 7 sales representatives in our report. I'm going to only look at the people in this job position that are in my community. And I'm going to run the report. And you can see now it's refined it down to just 3. Within this community, there is only 1 licensed agent and 2 sales representatives. So you could really go to town on your groupings or your filters. You can use them, you can interchange between what's your primary filter or your primary grouping and your filter. Alrighty, so we're going to move into now what reports options we have available. So here we have our goal completion. And like we were saying before, we have, I'll run this one. In our goal completion, you'll see a percentage total for each element in that goal against the criteria that you've entered. So for this welcome to be online learning goal, we've got a grouping of division, and 100% of those people in IT have completed the about the company element. And as we work through, but what we can see here is only 1 of those 2 staff have completed the orientation workshop. I'll go into how we find that out in a minute, but just moving all the way here. So here's each individual element's percentage in progress. And then at the end, you have a grouped percentage or progress. Remembering information in this goal completion report is telling us, is it a yes or a no? Have they completed this element in this goal or not? It doesn't look at the time allotted, doesn't look at renewal dates. It's just right now at 11:15, have they done the goal or not at this point in time? Let's run the same goal and grouping option, but for a compliance. Okay. So this has got a bit more green in it. So this can show you that the completion and the compliance are different. So a lot of people were red here, but they're still compliant for their induction now. Again, well, let's focus on IT, the poor souls, we'll focus there. They're showing us compliant for the first element, which is consistent. They did it in the completion and they're compliant. might be that that's a one and done type scenario. As we go across to the orientation workshop, though, this is actually now saying that the 2 staff are compliant. So back when it was a completion report, we had 1 person that hadn't done it yet. So this could be for many reasons, but the main reason is potentially that they're a new staff member and the element has a 30-day grace period or time allotted on it. So technically they're compliant. They're new. They may still be sitting in that 30-day window. They're compliant. Ideally, this sort of information is available to you somewhere, or it's consistent in the organization in terms of when an element comes into, or when a person is put into your Birch platform, how long they have for each element, be it 30 days, 10 days, no days, that you've been given that as a manager, or that you have an idea of what elements are potentially once off, one and done, so they would probably just be completed or not, and what ones have a bit more time and then meet those compliance and renewal settings. So they're the 2 key goal reports, a goal completion and goal compliance. Two new reports that we've released recently is a goal completion overview. There we go. Okay, run this report and refresh. Okay, so a goal completion overview, you can look at the total completion for a number of goals. So here we've got key learning, cybersecurity, and welcome to Be Online Learning. You can look at the total number of completions for multiple goals, but it's just at a high level. So you won't see the elements within them. You can just see here the percentage of people that have completed cybersecurity, none, and none for welcome to Be Online or key learning. You see NA, that's potentially because these people, finance, IT, and operations, don't necessarily need to do the elements that are in key learning. So again, hopefully you have this information available to you as a manager in knowing what it is key areas or key staff groups need to do. As per its namesake, it is an overview. It is saying, have they completed all of the elements and the requirements within that goal or not? So we know IT have completed some of the elements in the goal, welcome to Be Online Learning, but because it's not a complete yes or no, they're considered no, they have not completed. The other report we had was goal compliance overview, which is a similar vein. We've got key learning, cybersecurity, and Be Online Learning. However, this time I've used the grouping of my team. So we'll only see individuals now in this case. We'll see my team and the goals within. So within my team of the 11 people, 1 person has completed cybersecurity, 2 for key learning, and 4 for welcome. And this is where we can drill down into that team. So if I click on my team, it then takes me down into the specific team members and their results. NA is it's not applicable, it's not relevant for them. C is compliant and X is non-compliant. If it was a self-registered element or goal, you would have NR. However, NA is indicative of connections. They don't meet the connections and the requirements there. Okay. While we're in, I'll go back. Okay, so while we're in here, we're going to look at the graphical capabilities. So I want to go goal completion and graphical capabilities, run report. Okay, so here's this new little icon we've got here. So next to the run report and refresh. And this here is, you can choose between a table, a line chart, or a bar chart. So here is the table view. And then we can click on line chart. And it tracks the status across the graph. So we've got sales down here at 20%, or they're not very compliant or completed with the orientation workshops. And then we move back up here, and you can obviously see operations at this level. So that's a cool little line chart that you can follow, or we can move it to a bar chart, which is probably one of the more popular reports, graphics that we have. And you can see here all those options. The elements are along the x-axis and the percentages the y-axis on the left. We'll move back to the table. Okay, we're going to move now into the element completion reports. So let's go element completion. So if there is a goal with a lot of elements and you are really only interested in one or a few in particular, you can look into using element reports. Oh, and sorry, if you have any questions about the goal reports or what we covered just before, please put that question into the chat box and I'll respond to it after. So here we have the element completion report. Within this goal, there are many elements, but I am only interested in the company one and the orientation one for my team in particular. So this will again show me the overall percentage for my team and where they sit within these elements in particular. And again, we can drill down into who they are and the particular status or state of their compliance and their completion, their completion. We'll switch to the compliance now. So again, just showing you how it looks for a compliance point of view with the same filtering and grouping. Refresh. So you can interchange between using a run report button or a refresh. So you would generally use the refresh button here when the time stamp that's showing is perhaps a while in the past. And that will just make sure that you're getting that most recent data dump. Again, so remembering that with completion and compliance, they won't necessarily match up because completion is looking at have they done it or not in that point in time, and compliance is considering the renewal properties. As with the goal reports, if we go back, as with the goal reports, you have the graphical capabilities, but only when you're at a level that is above the individual person. So as you can see, if we go down here, that graph icon goes away. Of course, that's potentially because you may have 50, 100, a lot of users, so that graph would probably be quite messy. What we do have, though, is the action button. And this is where a bit of action happens, ironically. So let's go and hit that. So here before we were saying you get an extract non-compliant option and an action non-compliant. So the extract non-compliant will give you a rundown and details of the learners who fall into this category. It includes all the connections, managers, everything. You can print this, you can download it to Excel, depending on how many people you've got in there. That's your option. But even cooler and probably an easier way is the action non-compliant button. This presents you with a screen of all the people that are non-compliant or incomplete for those, and you can then, and this is pretty much similar to your team view. You can click email all members and your default email will open with everyone's email addresses in the BCC, and you can construct your message and then basically tell them to start getting to work and becoming compliant or completing their training. You also have the individual icon. So see how poor Bron Auto, she's still pending activation. So she probably needs a different email to the rest of them. Because there's only a few people, I could just remove her email from the BCC field in this, or I could just contact her individually and let her know she still hasn't logged in yet. If your list here is over 50 learners, you're actually going to get a message or something that's a list of everybody. So here you can see this is a picture of what would happen. You get a large image of all the email addresses, and you can click down the bottom here of that image, a clipboard icon, which copies all those email addresses. And then, of course, for privacy reasons, you would paste them in the BCC field of your default email application, and then craft your message and send it from there. So that's what that would look like. So the other two reports you've got here is an element completed isolated, and this one has a date range. But again, you are looking at completions within a date range, and you can either select the elements in particular, or if there are a lot, you can actually use your tags if they have been set up in your system. So for this example, I've actually chosen a tag that will show me all the element completions for this time period for any elements that are related to the Aged Care Quality Standard 1. And when I run that report, I get a nice list of all the staff, any related elements, the dates, and their results. It also returns the results of people that weren't particularly successful or didn't attend. So here you can see Abby Stell is not attended. And I think down here we've got someone that's not yet competent, Charles. So you can actually action those. Similar to what we did before, we can action incomplete and they come up on here. Thankfully, that opens in a new tab, so you can bounce back between the two screens. Another report that's new, if you haven't been aware of it already, is the element compliance trend line. And this one could be pretty cool. It'll show you compliance over a specific period of time, and you can identify where dips occurred. It does take into account any time and renewal settings on the element or goal. So I'll run that report and show you its example. And it also has a key trend line, so we can see that this is trending upwards after quite a low period of compliance. And that's those. They're the element reports that are available. There are two reports we haven't touched on yet, so I'll go through those with a minute 20 left of this, but we may go over slightly, so I do apologize. Renewal reports. So choose a renewal, and by selecting a date range, you can say, so I've got till the end of July, and I'm just going to do all elements. I'm not going to pick one in particular, but you may just want to see your first aid or your code of conduct, anything like that. So we'll hit any elements that are due by the 31st of July. And here we have a nice list. I'm just going to put it up to renewal date. So I'm going to order it. So across here, these are actionable filters. So while you can take these reports out into Excel and add filters and do all of that, you do have some functionality here that is actually can help make it a bit quicker to find some results if you know exactly what you're looking for. So I just applied the renewal date filter to bring up the most overdue. So Jim is severely overdue with his code of conduct and ethics. And then we've got Abby as well. They're suffering a bit. And you can also use a search. So if I just want to pull up any records on Charles, then I can use the search in the top right. And just that. And he comes up with all his records. And that's the renewal report. So you'll see your staff only at this time. There's no grouping option. Because you're running these reports, it will only show you your staff. Same for the SCORM report. So this SCORM here, This allows you to look at any of your e-learning content that perhaps is tracking. If your e-learning has quizzes and it is set up, so is published to track completion data, that gets sent back to the LMS and you can look that up. So we're going to look up our cybersecurity, and you can actually leave it blank like this. And you can see an overall total for the questions within that e-learning. So in cybersecurity, I can see that most people are getting the Connect the Safe module practice with its description incorrect. So perhaps the information within the element within the course is not clear enough, or it's just people aren't reading the content. Either way, you get that nice summation here. Then if you've got someone in particular that you want to consider, so it could be that a trainer is looking into why someone is continually failing, or just a general run of how quickly people are completing the quizzes. So by choosing a participant in particular, you can look at how many attempts they take, and it pulls through their first attempt. It tells you the duration and the score. If they leave the e-learning and come back in, it will track another attempt. And of course, it will track quite a few, depending on how many you've allowed to happen in that e-learning package. So here you can see for Hyacinth, we can see what the correct answer was, and down here what she got wrong. And perhaps if this is you look through all the attempts, you can see there's a consistent pattern for her. The trainer or someone can actually then maybe address that separately and follow a due course there. So these are all the report types that are available to you as a manager. If there's any questions on those report types, please pop them into the chat now. I'm just going to run through the report templates, which you may have seen me tapping through up here on the top right. So of course, we want to save ourselves time. We don't want to be having to enter in all of our search criteria, particularly when there's things that are, there are a lot of elements or criteria to address. So there are two things you can do. Once you've set up a report, I'm just going to pick some random things here. There we go. And you've selected your groupings and you've added your communities. You don't have to keep doing that every time, but at any point you can click the Save as a New Template button here, and a pop-up appears and New Template, and save it whatever you want to call it, hit Save. And now anytime you come into either the standard report section here and select that type of report, you have the option to just go straight in and choose that report and run it straight from there. Even better and even quicker is the report templates here on the left side. And particularly when you have a lot of templates, here is where it is a lot quicker to run. So here are all the templates I was using just now in my webinar, as well as the one we just saved. So I can now just go straight to the eye and run that report, and I get that information. So here I've got 11/28. I want to just check that I am getting the most recent data. So I push the refresh button up here in the top left, and you can see now it is 11:35. So you've got those options there, and we can go back to our directory actually. Because these are your templates, so it's report templates and my reports, these are you and only you have access to them. You can edit them at any stage and you can delete them at any stage. But probably the most common button you're going to be pushing is the eye icon to run them at any point in time. There are two reports in Birch that aren't available to you as a manager at the moment, and that is an event report and an external achievement report. But system administrators and trainer administrators can share them with you, or any other manager or any other person, with those security roles can share reports with you, and they'll appear under the shared with me. So here I have a few that Bron has shared with me, or that another person has shared with me here. So the two reports I didn't get to run for you, but have been shared to me, is an event report. So I'm going to hit the I, and I can run that at any point. I'm going to hit the refresh icon to make sure, particularly for an event report, I'm getting the most up-to-date information. So an event report is date range. So the person that created this has said any dates in any events that are happening in the 2023 time year. And it shows me how many people are registered into the events and how many people are on the wait list, how many people are on any approvals. And I find as a manager, this would help in planning ahead, or planning if you've got a whole bunch of approvals, what CPRs are pretty good, have they got plenty of room? Do you need to perhaps decline and put them in another session? This works really, really well, I feel. So that's an event report that can be shared with you. And the other was an external achievement report. You can view all the external achievements that have, again, for the person that's created that report template, they might say to show all of the certificates for a date period or for a particular element. And one thing through shared reports is that you can see people that aren't necessarily your staff or your direct reports. That's why a system admin can create and share, because a system admin can see everything and see everyone. And once they share the report and the data in that report, that all goes through to you. So generally, this usually gets used sometimes with executives. If you're not using the reporting admin security role, shared reports and shared templates is probably the way to go. So here, Demo Bron is showing me the equal employment opportunity report, because I don't have any staff in that goal. But if I was to run this report, I can then track and see the trend line of the equal employment over the year. Whew, that covers the reporting capabilities of Birch, which are many. It's a great way to see live data, use live data. While you can export and use APIs to put this into external programs such as Power BI or use Excel if that's what you're more familiar with, the benefit of using reports in Birch is that data is current, it's accurate, it's what's happening right then and there. There is a Power BI plugin coming, but next week there is the last of our Manager Series webinars on learner management. Again, same time, 11 a.m. for Eastern States, 10:30 for Central States. Thank you very much for your time.